The war turned when the alien princess stepped forward alone. The humans had no reason to fight so fiercely, at least according to the Cathari Dominion. From the Dominion's perspective, humanity was weak, disorganized, slow to learn, and lacking the advanced technology that the Dominion had perfected over thousands of years. Yet somehow, the humans refused to yield. They adapted quickly, often turning Cathari strategies against them, and survived battles that should have ended them. The Dominion viewed them as persistent, frustrating, and inexplicably brave. In the Cathari capital, a city of glass spires and floating platforms that shimmered in artificial light, the council convened. The atmosphere was tense. High-ranking officials argued endlessly over what to do next. Fleet after fleet had been sent to subdue humanity, but each attempt ended in failure or partial victory. The humans were clever, resourceful, and unpredictable. No one could understand how such a small, seemingly primitive species could resist the Dominion so effectively. Princess Valera sat in her private chamber, listening to the heated discussion that echoed through the council hall. Her hands rested lightly on her knees, her eyes steady and calm despite the chaos around her. She had grown up learning that the Dominion would always win, that humans were insignificant. But now, as reports of human victories continued to arrive, she felt a growing sense of unease. The humans were not just surviving, they were learning. Every defeat the Dominion inflicted was met with an adaptation, a clever countermeasure, or a completely new tactic that the Cathari had not anticipated. The council finally turned to her. "Princess Valera," one of the elders said, "you are young, but the council believes that your presence may change the course of this war. Humanity respects courage, and perhaps meeting a Cathari leader in person, without threat, without weapons, will force them to surrender. This is your mission." Valera's heart did not race, though a quiet determination stirred within her. She knew the council saw this as a simple formality, an intimidation tactic. They assumed humans would recognize her authority and back down. But she had spent years studying human behavior, and she had seen something unusual about them. A refusal to give up, a stubborn strength that no alien force could easily crush. She wondered silently if the council understood what they were asking her to do. Days later, her vessel emerged from hyperspace above the human-controlled system. It was sleek and unarmed, a deliberate choice to show that she carried no threat. Humans, on the other hand, had their fleets positioned defensively, wary of any trick. Scouts had already relayed every detail of her approach, yet no one fired. Instead, human ships held formation, their weapons trained but not active. Every human commander present felt a mix of curiosity and tension as the small alien craft descended toward their station. When Valera landed, she stepped out into the human territory alone. She carried no guards, no protective drones, nothing but her presence. The air around her shimmered slightly with the energy field of her suit, but it was subtle, almost ceremonial. She could see the humans clearly, soldiers in organized lines, leaders watching from elevated positions, their expressions unreadable. The silence was thick, heavy with the weight of history, battle, and anticipation. She took a slow step forward. Every eye followed her. Every hand remained near weapons that were not yet drawn. She was not afraid. She could sense the tension, the caution, but not hostility. This was not a trap. At least it did not appear to be. Valera had been trained to expect treachery from the very first day she learned to walk. But humans were different. They did not move like creatures who acted only from instinct or orders. They calculated, they observed, they chose carefully. She realized almost immediately that this species valued thought and reasoning over raw aggression. The human commander approached her. He was tall, with a uniform marked by medals and insignias that indicated years of service. He did not bow or show submission. He did not brandish a weapon. Instead, he spoke in a voice that carried authority without arrogance. "Princess Valera," he said simply. "We were expecting you. What brings the heir of the Dominion to our doorstep?" Valera felt a strange calm as she replied. She did not speak as a ruler demanding obedience. She spoke as a representative, a messenger, one who carried the weight of her people's expectations and the knowledge that her every word could change the course of the war. "I come to speak," she said, "alone, with no threat. I have come because your resistance has been remarkable, but the Council believes this war can end if we meet face to face." The commander's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no fear in his gaze. Instead, there was curiosity, a careful measurement of her words. "We did not ask for your counsel," he replied. "We fight for survival, nothing more. If you wish to speak, you may do so, but know this: we will not surrender to intimidation." Valera paused. She had been trained to expect fear, obedience, even desperation from those who faced the Dominion. Yet the humans stood there, calm, unyielding. She could see the pride in their stance, the determination in their faces. And in that moment, she realized that this war was not about weapons or fleets or strategies alone. It was about spirit, humanity's spirit. She took another step closer, allowing her presence to convey what her words could not fully express. "Then perhaps we can find another way," she said softly, almost to herself. "A way that does not require more blood." The human commander considered her words carefully. Around them, soldiers shifted slightly, some unconsciously gripping weapons that remained sheathed. Yet no one acted aggressively. Valera understood that she was in a delicate position. One wrong move, one misjudged gesture, and the centuries of tension between their species could erupt into violence instantly. But for the first time, she felt something new, a spark of respect. The humans had not cowered, had not begged for mercy. They had stood their ground with intelligence, not aggression, and in their resistance, they had revealed a power the Dominion had never measured: resilience. As they spoke, Valera began to understand that the war was no longer simply a battle for territory or control. It was a test of understanding, of perception, and of values. The humans fought not because they wanted to dominate, but because they refused to be dominated. Every decision they had made, every loss they had endured, had strengthened them rather than weakened them. And the realization hit her like a jolt. The Council's assumption that humans could be intimidated was completely wrong. She looked around at the soldiers, at the leaders, at the carefully maintained formations that hinted at discipline and strategy. "You have endured much," she said, her voice carrying over the silent assembly. "And yet, you remain unbroken." The human commander's gaze met hers. "We endure," he said simply, "and we will continue to endure. That is all anyone can do when the universe tries to crush you." Valera felt a mixture of awe and unease. She had entered this encounter expecting fear and submission. Instead, she had found a species that did not bow, that did not flinch, that measured threats not by power alone, but by principle. She realized that the war, which had seemed inevitable and straightforward, was more complicated than she had ever imagined. For hours they spoke. Not of threats, not of battle plans, but of understanding. Valera asked questions about human tactics, about how they survived despite overwhelming odds. She listened as the humans described their losses, their sacrifices, and their choices. And as she listened, she saw the patterns, the logic, the brilliance in their persistence. The sun, or what passed for a sun in this system, began to set, casting a warm glow over the assembly. Valera knew she would return to the council soon, but she also knew that nothing she had learned here could be unlearned. Humanity had survived not because of weapons, not because of strategy alone, but because of something the Dominion had underestimated: their refusal to surrender their principles, even when faced with certain death. And in that quiet moment, the princess understood that the war could no longer be measured simply in victories and losses. It would turn on understanding, on choices, and on the courage to stand alone in the face of the impossible. She took a final step back, bowing not in submission but in acknowledgement of what she had witnessed. "I will return to my people," she said softly, "and I will speak truthfully of what I have seen." The human commander nodded. "Then perhaps, Princess Valera, the war may yet have a different ending than anyone imagined." As she departed, leaving the human fleet behind, Valera felt the weight of the future pressing upon her. The council would expect a report of submission, of intimidation, of victory. Instead, she carried knowledge of a species unlike any she had encountered, a species that could not be broken by force alone. And she realized that the war, which had seemed so predictable, was about to change forever. Princess Valera returned to the Dominion capital, the weight of what she had seen pressing on her shoulders. Her ship glided silently through the city's upper skies, past towers of glass and light that reflected the endless night beyond. The council waited for her arrival, eager to hear of the human submission or their failure. Yet Valera knew she could not deliver the story they expected. The humans had not feared her. They had not obeyed. Instead, they had stood, calm and unwavering, revealing a strength that no Cathari had anticipated. She stepped from her vessel into the grand council hall, her steps echoing across the polished floor. The elders and generals rose at her approach, waiting for her words, ready to consume them as proof of the human's weakness. "Speak," one elder commanded. "Tell us of the humans. Have they surrendered?" Valera's gaze swept over them, and she found no point in hiding the truth. "They have not surrendered," she said. Her voice was steady, controlled, carrying the calm certainty that had defined her presence among the humans. "They do not fear the Dominion. They do not yield to intimidation. They fight, yes, but not to conquer. They fight to endure, to survive, and to protect what is theirs." Murmurs ran through the council, shock and disbelief mingling with outrage. "You speak of a primitive species as if they are equal to us," another elder demanded. "They are humans, we control the stars, their resistance is meaningless." Valera shook her head. "It is not meaningless. Their endurance is deliberate. Every time we have struck, they have adapted. Every strategy we have used against them has been learned, analyzed, and turned into something stronger. They survive because they are clever, because they refuse to give up, because they hold to principles the Dominion cannot understand." A general banged a fist on the table, voice rising. "You claim they are clever. Clever does not win wars. Technology wins wars. We have superior fleets, weapons, and intelligence. One of our armies could destroy an entire human system in a single strike." Valera's expression did not falter. "And yet," she said softly, "we have not won. They survive. And more than that, they inspire fear not through weapons but through their refusal to bend. That is why I went alone. They respect courage, yes, but not power alone. They respond to honesty, to clarity, to the acknowledgement that they will not be crushed. That is what the Council does not understand. That is what we must understand if we wish to end this war without destroying ourselves." The elders stared at her, some in disbelief, others in frustration. They had never imagined that one human encounter could shift the perspective of a princess, much less one so young. The Council had grown used to domination, to immediate compliance. The idea that a species could resist the Dominion through spirit alone seemed impossible. Yet Valera had seen it. She had spoken to leaders and soldiers who had faced annihilation and chosen endurance. She had felt their quiet determination, their refusal to bow. One of the generals, older and scarred from decades of previous campaigns, leaned forward. "And what do you propose we do, Princess?" he asked. "Continue this war indefinitely. Our fleets cannot be everywhere. Our resources are finite. If these humans adapt as you claim, they will become unstoppable." Valera paused. "We must change how we approach them," she said. "Not through fear, not through force alone, but through understanding. If we continue to wage war blindly, we will exhaust ourselves. Humanity will survive, and in time, they will surpass us." We need to recognize their resilience, their intelligence, and consider that there may be another way to coexist, or at least avoid total destruction. Silence fell across the council hall. The room was filled with the hum of artificial lights and the distant sounds of a city that had grown accustomed to certainty and victory. Valera could feel the weight of history pressing against her, the expectation of obedience and conquest. Yet she also felt a quiet determination rising within her, stronger than any fear she had known. The humans had shown her a truth that no council or general could ignore. Strength was not measured by weapons alone. The discussion continued for hours, but Valera's mind drifted back to the humans she had met. She thought of the commander who had spoken so calmly, of the soldiers who had stood without fear, and of the choices they had made to endure rather than destroy. Their methods were not perfect, their technology was limited, but their strategy, though unconventional, was effective in ways the Dominion had never considered. As she pondered these thoughts, her aide approached, bringing reports from the front lines. Systems that the Dominion had assumed conquered were rebuilding, not just with speed, but with ingenuity. Human engineers had adapted alien technology, creating defenses the Dominion had never anticipated. Colonies that had been thought destroyed were thriving in secret, using strategies designed to minimize casualties and preserve knowledge. Valera read the reports with growing fascination. Every page confirmed what she had seen. Humanity was not simply surviving. They were learning, evolving, and preparing for a future that the Dominion could not predict. She realized that the Council's assumption that humans could be intimidated into surrender was a fundamental mistake. The humans did not respond to power. They responded to courage, to honesty, and to respect. That night, Valera stood on her balcony, overlooking the city's shimmering towers. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the horizon, a constant reminder of the vastness of space and the scale of the conflict. She thought about the humans she had met, about their unwavering determination, and about the lessons they had taught her without even realizing it. They were not merely survivors. They were examples of something the Dominion had almost forgotten: the power of principle and the refusal to surrender one's spirit. The next morning, she requested an audience with the council. When she arrived, the room was crowded with elders, generals, and advisors. They waited expectantly, eager for her plan, for some concrete strategy that would secure the Dominion's dominance. Valera began, speaking with calm authority. "We cannot continue as we have," she said. "The humans will not submit to us through fear. They adapt faster than we anticipate. They survive because they refuse to give up. If we wish to end this war, we must consider alternatives." A general laughed, sharp and bitter. "Alternatives? You speak as if diplomacy can conquer them. They have fought entire fleets with less than half the strength we possess. You are naive, princess. Humanity does not yield to words. They yield to fire, to destruction." Valera shook her head slowly. "And yet they continue. We have destroyed fleets, systems, entire colonies, and they adapt. They learn from each encounter, preparing for the next. They survive, not because they are stronger in combat, but because they understand resilience. Every strike we deliver is met with ingenuity. They endure because they have no choice but to endure, and because they refuse to compromise their principles. That is their power." The council fell silent, some struggling to accept the truth, others quietly considering the implications. Valera pressed on. "We have underestimated them, and that mistake could cost us everything. If we continue this war blindly, we will exhaust ourselves, lose resources, and give the humans time to grow stronger. They are not a threat to be crushed. They are a force to be understood, respected, and, if possible, negotiated with. Otherwise, we will face an enemy that cannot be defeated by sheer power alone." For the first time, some in the council considered what she said seriously. The humans' endurance, their ability to adapt, and their refusal to bow challenged everything the Dominion had believed about warfare and dominance. Valeera could feel the shift, small but undeniable, as the Council absorbed her words. Days passed as she worked tirelessly to convince the Council to adopt a new approach. She met with generals, strategists, and scholars, presenting evidence of human resilience, intelligence, and morality. Each conversation strengthened her understanding that humanity's greatest weapon was not their fleets or their weapons. It was their refusal to abandon their principles, even in the face of overwhelming force. Finally, the Council reluctantly agreed to a limited experiment. A team of Dominion diplomats would engage with human leaders, not as conquerors, but as representatives willing to listen. Valeera would accompany them, a symbol of good faith, a bridge between two species that had fought for so long yet remained so different. As preparations were made, Valeera reflected on her encounter with the humans. She had entered expecting fear and submission. Instead, she had found courage, intelligence, and a quiet power that could not be measured by weapons alone. The humans had shown her that wars were not won solely by strength. They were won by understanding, by endurance, and by the ability to adapt without losing oneself. When the delegation finally departed, Valeera felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. She did not know how the humans would respond to a diplomatic mission, or if they would even trust the Dominion after so much loss and destruction. Yet she carried with her the knowledge that this species, so underestimated, had the power to change the course of the war, not through violence, but through resilience, courage, and principle. The journey through space was quiet, each member of the delegation lost in their own thoughts. Valeera gazed out at the stars, imagining the humans waiting ahead, ready to test them in ways the Dominion could not predict. She knew that the coming encounter would be crucial, not only for the outcome of the war, but for the understanding of what it meant to be strong, to endure, and to survive without surrendering one's values. For Princess Valeera, the path forward was clear. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a species to be understood. And in understanding them, she hoped the Dominion might learn a lesson far greater than any battle could teach. That true strength lies not only in power, but in courage, intelligence, and the refusal to be broken. The delegation's journey toward the human-controlled systems was long and tense. Princess Valeera sat in her private chamber aboard the diplomatic vessel, staring out into the endless darkness of space. Stars streaked past as the ship glided silently through hyperspace, yet the emptiness offered no comfort. She thought of the humans she had met before, of the commander who had spoken calmly, and the soldiers who had stood their ground without fear. Their courage and determination had lingered in her mind like a quiet echo, a reminder that the Dominion's assumptions about power were flawed. The other members of the delegation busied themselves with reports, strategy reviews, and simulations. They were eager, nervous, and unsure. For most of them, humanity was a problem to be crushed, not understood. Valeera listened patiently as they debated the merits of negotiation versus intimidation, understanding that she would have to guide them carefully. The humans could detect dishonesty or aggression from a mile away, she knew, and if the delegation failed to approach them with respect, any chance for dialogue would be lost. Hours turned into days as the ship neared its destination. Valeera walked through the corridors of the vessel, her mind racing with questions. Would the humans accept her presence? Would they see her as a representative of the Dominion, or would they recognize the sincerity she carried with her? She thought of the words spoken by the commander she had met before. "We endure, and we will continue to endure." The memory of that calm statement gave her resolve. She knew that intimidation would fail. Only understanding could open the door to peace. When the ship finally emerged from hyperspace, the view was breathtaking. A massive human fleet spread across the system, vessels of all shapes and sizes moving in precise coordination. Despite their smaller numbers and simpler technology, the fleet radiated efficiency and confidence. Valera felt a thrill of respect. These humans were not afraid. They were prepared. Every ship, every formation, every strategy spoke of intelligence and discipline. The delegation's vessel descended toward the human capital, where the leaders awaited. Valera could see the city sprawling across a rocky planet, gleaming under the light of its sun. It was not a city of extravagance or luxury, but one of resilience, built to survive and endure. Structures were functional, strong, and carefully designed. The humans valued practicality over display, a reflection of the principles that had allowed them to persist against overwhelming odds. As the vessel landed, soldiers and leaders approached, watching closely. There were no weapons drawn, but every eye was alert, measuring the delegation with the caution born of experience. Valera stepped forward first, her presence calm and deliberate. She carried no weapons, no guards, only her authority and the sincerity that had guided her throughout this mission. The humans studied her carefully as she had studied them. Valera felt the weight of their scrutiny, yet she remained composed. She knew that this encounter would determine much more than the immediate negotiations. It would define whether the Dominion could understand humanity at all. The commander who had met her before stepped forward to greet her again. His expression was calm, his posture relaxed yet commanding. "Princess Valera," he said, "we did not expect the council to send such a delegation, but we accept your presence. Speak, and we will listen." Valera nodded, appreciating the straightforward approach. She knew that the humans valued honesty above all else, and she resolved to meet them in the same way. "I come to understand," she said. "Not to demand surrender, not to intimidate, but to speak openly and honestly. The Council wishes to find a way to end this conflict, and I am here to bridge the gap between our species." The commander's eyes softened slightly. "Then you have taken the first step toward understanding. But understand this, we will not compromise our principles. We endure as we have endured before, and we will continue to do so. If you wish to negotiate, you must respect that we will not bend to fear or coercion." Valera felt a surge of respect. These humans were consistent, unyielding, and principled. She realized that the Council's belief that power could dominate them was completely misguided. "I understand," she said, "and I respect your endurance. That is why I have come, not as an adversary but as one willing to listen. We must find a solution that does not require further bloodshed." The discussions began in earnest, and Valera observed the humans' careful approach to negotiation. They were meticulous, logical, and thoughtful. They did not respond to threats or intimidation, only to reason and clarity. Every question they asked revealed intelligence and strategy. Every answer they gave reflected experience and foresight. Valera could see that these humans had survived countless challenges not because of technology alone, but because they understood resilience, sacrifice, and adaptation. Over the next several days, the delegation met with human leaders in a series of discussions, each more intense and revealing than the last. Valera listened as humans explained how they had survived Dominion attacks, how they had learned from mistakes, and how they had built strategies not just to win battles, but to preserve lives and knowledge. She realized that humanity's greatest weapon was not their fleets, nor their technology, nor even their numbers. It was their mind, their spirit, and their refusal to surrender even when defeat seemed inevitable. At times, the delegation grew frustrated. "They will never yield," one general complained. "They are too stubborn. We cannot negotiate with them. They will not surrender." Valera shook her head. "It is not stubbornness," she said calmly. "It is intelligence. They do not act without reason. They endure because they choose to endure. That is their power. And if we continue to fight blindly, we will only grow weaker while they grow stronger." As the meetings progressed, Valera gained new insights into human society. They valued cooperation over dominance, foresight over impulse, and principle over convenience. Each choice they made was deliberate, calculated to preserve their strength while maintaining their values. She realized that this approach explained much of their survival. They did not simply resist, they improved, evolved, and adapted in ways the Dominion had never anticipated. One evening, Valera walked through the city with the commander who had first welcomed her. The streets were alive with activity, but not chaos. Humans moved with purpose, working together to maintain their systems, repair damaged structures, and support one another. Children played safely in designated areas, scientists and engineers discussed projects openly, and soldiers trained with precision. The city was a testament to endurance, planning, and community, a civilization that thrived not by conquest, but by unity and resilience. Valera paused to watch a group of engineers testing a defensive drone. She noted how the humans had adapted Dominion technology to fit their needs, improving efficiency without creating unnecessary destruction. She realized that these people had taken the tools of their enemy and turned them into instruments of survival and learning. Her admiration deepened. The humans were clever, patient, and principled. They were not just surviving, they were preparing for the future. As they walked, the commander spoke. "You see why we do not fear the Dominion," he said. "We have learned from every attack, adapted to every challenge, and endured when others would have fallen. That is how we survive. You cannot understand our strength by looking at our weapons or our numbers. You must understand the choices we make and why we make them." Valera nodded. "I see it now," she said softly. "Your power lies not in what you can destroy, but in what you refuse to lose, your spirit, your principles, and your determination. It is remarkable, and it changes everything the Dominion believes about warfare." The next days brought intense discussions and careful diplomacy. Valera observed how humans responded to each proposal, how they challenged assumptions, and how they tested the delegation's sincerity. They were cautious, yet open, demonstrating a willingness to engage if the Dominion proved trustworthy. Valera realized that trust was the key to any agreement. Humans would not bend, but they would negotiate if sincerity was evident. Throughout the discussions, Valera became a bridge between the two species. She explained the Council's intentions, clarified misunderstandings, and offered insights into the human's perspective. At the same time, she reported back to the Council on humanity's resilience, intelligence, and principle-based power. She knew that the information she provided could prevent further unnecessary bloodshed and help the Dominion approach the humans with respect rather than force. One morning, after weeks of meetings, a breakthrough occurred. The humans proposed a limited agreement, a ceasefire in certain contested systems, coordinated efforts to preserve civilian populations, and shared knowledge about dangerous technology that could harm both sides. It was not total peace, but it was progress, a recognition that continued conflict could be avoided if both sides were willing to act with intelligence and restraint. Valera felt a surge of hope. This was not victory in the traditional sense, but it was a step toward understanding. Humanity's strength had forced the Dominion to reconsider its approach, and for the first time, Valera felt that the war might not end in destruction. It could end in respect, negotiation, and survival for both species. As the delegation prepared to return to the Dominion capital, Valera reflected on all she had learned. Humanity had shown her that endurance, intelligence, and principle were more powerful than fleets and weapons. They had revealed that true strength was not measured by domination, but by the ability to survive without surrendering one's values. She knew that this lesson would shape her decisions and the future of the Dominion. The humans watched them depart, calm and composed, their expressions unreadable but confident. Valera understood that they had evaluated her, her delegation, and the council they represented. They had tested the Dominion's sincerity and had not been swayed by fear or flattery. In doing so, they had demonstrated once again that their greatest weapon was their mind and their spirit, not their fleets or firepower. As the ship left orbit, Valera stood silently, gazing at the stars. She knew that the war was far from over, but she also knew that something fundamental had changed. The humans had proven that power alone could not dictate outcomes, that principle and endurance mattered more than intimidation. And she understood that, in the coming battles, the Dominion would have to face a species that could not be broken by force alone. Princess Valera's heart was calm, but her mind was alight with thought. The humans had taught her a lesson that no council meeting, no strategy session, and no war report could convey. Strength was measured not only by what one could destroy, but by what one could endure and preserve. And as the delegation traveled back toward the Dominion capital, she knew that the future of the war and the history of both species would be shaped by this understanding. The journey back was quiet, filled with reflection and careful planning. Valera worked with the delegation to craft a report that would convey the human strength accurately, without exaggeration or fear. She knew the council would resist the truth, would struggle to accept that a species so small, so seemingly weak, could challenge the Dominion through resilience alone. Yet she also knew that this truth was essential. The future of the war depended on understanding, not intimidation. When they finally arrived at the capital, Valera prepared to present her findings. The council waited, eager to hear of progress, of submission, of dominance achieved. But what she would present was neither victory nor defeat. It was understanding. And that understanding had the power to change the course of the war forever. The council chamber was silent when Princess Valera entered, the weight of her journey and the lessons she had learned pressing heavily on her. Elders, generals, and advisors waited, eyes fixed, expecting a report of conquest, of intimidation, of the Dominion's continued superiority. Instead, Valera carried something far different: truth. She had witnessed humanity not as a weak species to be crushed, but as a force defined by endurance, intelligence, and unyielding principle. She stepped forward, her hands resting lightly at her sides. "Honored members of the council," she began, her voice steady, "I have returned from the human systems with knowledge that cannot be ignored. Humanity is unlike any species we have faced before. They do not bend to power. They do not surrender to fear. They endure, adapt, and grow stronger with every challenge we place before them." A general scoffed, unable to hide his disbelief. "They are human, primitive, and insignificant. How can you claim they are a threat to the Dominion?" Valera's eyes met his calmly. "Not a threat in the sense you imagine. They are a challenge because they cannot be intimidated. We have destroyed fleets, systems, and technologies, yet they continue to survive. They learn from every encounter. They endure because they choose to endure, and because they refuse to compromise their principles. That is a power we have never understood, until now." The room was quiet. Some elders shifted in their seats, the weight of Valera's words settling over them like a shadow. They had always measured strength by fleets, weapons, and technology, yet here was a princess, returned from the front lines, describing a power they could not measure with any tool in their arsenal. She continued, "When I spoke with their leaders, I found a species united not by fear, but by principle. They fight not to conquer, but to preserve life, knowledge, and the values that define them. They have faced our attacks and adapted. Every loss we inflicted was met with improvement, every threat with strategy. They are not defeated. They are prepared and growing stronger each day." The council murmured among themselves, some struggling to accept the truth. Valera allowed the silence to stretch, letting them feel the weight of their misjudgment. Then she spoke again, firmer this time. "We have assumed that strength comes from dominance, but humanity teaches a different lesson. True strength is measured by endurance, intelligence, and the refusal to surrender one's values. That is why I went to them alone. They respect courage, honesty, and clarity, not power alone, and they have shown us that the war cannot be won through fear. An elder leaned forward, voice tight with frustration. Are you suggesting, what exactly? That we stop fighting? That we allow these humans to continue expanding while we do nothing? Valera shook her head. Not nothing. We act, but with understanding. We negotiate, we build trust, we recognize their strength. They will not submit to us through intimidation. If we wish to survive, if we wish to prevent unnecessary destruction, we must meet them with respect and clarity. Otherwise, the war will continue, and humanity will grow stronger while we weaken ourselves in endless conflict. A general slammed his fist on the table. You speak as if diplomacy can defeat them. They have resisted fleets larger than anything the Dominion has ever deployed. Do you truly believe that talking will be enough? Valera's gaze did not falter. Not talking alone, but respect, understanding, and strategic cooperation. They do not yield to fear. They respond to intelligence and principle. If we recognize this, we can avoid total war. If we ignore it, we risk losing everything we have fought to build. For hours, the council debated, argued, and challenged her statements. Valera listened patiently, countering objections with observations from her visit, detailing every human strategy, every example of resilience and ingenuity she had witnessed. Slowly, grudgingly, some began to understand. The humans were not just surviving, they were outpacing expectations, learning faster than the Dominion could predict, and adapting in ways that no fleet or weapon could prevent. Finally, Valera presented the plan she had developed during her time with the humans. It was bold and unconventional, a strategy that relied on diplomacy, respect, and selective collaboration. Certain contested systems would be jointly administered to prevent further loss of life. Knowledge of dangerous technology would be shared under strict supervision to avoid accidents and unnecessary escalation. Human leaders would be recognized as legitimate negotiators, not pawns to be coerced. In return, the Dominion would gain trust, insight into human innovation, and the ability to prevent unintentional escalation. The Council was silent. Many could not believe that the humans, whom they had always seen as inferior, could dictate the terms of engagement. Yet Valera's calm conviction left no room for dismissal. She had seen the human strength firsthand, and she knew that ignoring it would be catastrophic. Weeks later, Valera led the delegation back to the human capital, this time with full authority to negotiate an unprecedented agreement. As her vessel descended, she could see the humans waiting, organized and disciplined as always. Their calm confidence reminded her of why she had returned to the council with honesty rather than manipulation. The humans had proven themselves capable of judgment, strategy, and principle. The commander who had first welcomed her approached again. "Princess Valera," he said, "we see you come not as a conqueror but as an envoy of understanding. Speak your intentions." Valera bowed slightly, a gesture of respect rather than submission. "We come to propose a way forward. A plan to avoid further bloodshed, to preserve both our peoples, and to build understanding. We recognize your strength, your endurance, and your principles. The Dominion wishes to act not with fear but with respect." The commander studied her carefully, then nodded. "That is the first sensible approach we have seen from the Dominion. We will listen. We will consider your proposal. But know this, we will not compromise our principles, nor will we accept empty promises." Over the following days, discussions unfolded with intensity, yet with an underlying current of respect. Valera observed how humans negotiated, careful, logical, and principled. Every decision they made was deliberate, every concession measured. They were not easily swayed, yet they were willing to cooperate when sincerity was evident. Valera realized that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their fleets or weapons, but in their mind and spirit, the ability to endure without losing themselves. The negotiations were challenging. Moments of tension arose when past attacks were brought up, when the losses humans had suffered were recounted. Valera spoke honestly, acknowledging the destruction caused by the Dominion and taking responsibility for her people's actions. She conveyed not excuses but understanding and recognition. Slowly, the humans responded. After weeks of careful negotiation, an agreement was reached. Certain contested systems would be jointly administered, fleets would respect designated boundaries, and knowledge would be shared to prevent catastrophic mistakes. It was not total peace, but it was a foundation, an acknowledgement that conflict could be managed through principle, intelligence, and respect, rather than domination. Valera felt a quiet satisfaction. She had not achieved victory in the conventional sense, but she had achieved something far more profound: recognition of humanity's strength and the preservation of life and values for both species. The humans had taught her that wars could be shaped not only by weapons, but by intelligence, endurance, and principle. When the delegation returned to the Dominion capital, Valera presented the outcome. Some members of the council were skeptical, others astonished, yet all had to confront the undeniable truth. Humanity could not be broken through fear alone. Their endurance, intelligence, and principles had changed the course of the war. Valera's role was recognized, not only as a princess but as a visionary. She had bridged two species, demonstrating that understanding, courage, and sincerity could achieve what fleets and weapons could not. The Council slowly began to accept that the Dominion had underestimated humanity, and that respect, rather than dominance, would be necessary moving forward. As Valera walked through the corridors of the capital, she reflected on what had occurred. Humanity had survived countless challenges, adapted to overwhelming force, and refused to compromise their principles. They had endured with intelligence and foresight, and in doing so, they had taught the Dominion an invaluable lesson. Strength was not measured by the ability to destroy, but by the capacity to endure and adapt without losing one's values. The war did not end with a battle, nor with a decisive victory. It ended with understanding. Humanity and the Dominion had come to recognize one another's strengths, limitations, and principles. And at the heart of this unprecedented change was a single alien princess who had chosen to approach with honesty and courage, alone, willing to see a species not as subjects to be conquered, but as equals to be understood. The humans would never forget her presence, nor the respect she showed, and the Dominion would never again underestimate a species whose power lay not in fleets, weapons, or technology, but in endurance, principle, and unyielding spirit. History would record that the turning point of the war was not a battle of fire and destruction, but a meeting of minds and hearts. It was a lesson in courage, intelligence, and respect. Princess Valera had stepped forward alone, and in doing so, she had changed the destiny of two species forever. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the Dominion capital, Valera stood at the edge of a balcony, looking into the vastness of space. She understood now that the war had taught her more than she could have imagined, that true strength was measured not by domination, but by understanding, courage, and the refusal to be broken. And humanity, with all their ingenuity, principle, and endurance, had proven themselves the finest example of that truth. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. The war turned when the alien princess stepped forward alone.